The Quin webinar here. We're going to give maybe just a few more seconds or a minute or so as I see people rolling in here. So if you need to grab a glass of water, another cup of coffee, go ahead and do that. And for you guys joining, I'm curious to see where everybody's joining from. So our chat we're going to use for questions here today. Go ahead and throw in where you are joining us today. If you're at home, what city, what state. For those of you that know me, I'm based in St. Pete, Florida. Jason Walkow, who's one of our co-founders, is in the chat here today. He's over in Los Angeles, as well as Jeremy Clark, if you've worked with him. And then Brina Fain is over in San Francisco. So I'm curious to see in the chat where everybody's calling in from today. All right, great. I can see a few things rolling in here. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get things kicked off here. Welcome to our second Quin webinar here that's focused here on guidelines versus workflows. These webinars, we want to bring you guys the latest tips, tricks, integrations, or places that people get hung up to make sure that everybody is able to maximize their use of Quin and to the highest level. So today, our last session, what we focused on was really three of our main workflows, which are our note taker, email replies, and thinking of you workflows, and really how to set up really powerful instructions for your assistants to customize your experience and what you want it to do. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, don't worry. We have them on demand here on our website. Sharing my screen here. You guys should be able to see heyquin.io/webinars. And our last webinar that we put on here is available. And then we have kind of all of our upcoming ones here as well. So you can see what's coming down the pipe, but we do want to hear from you guys on what you want to hear from. But as far as today here, what we're going to focus on in our time, we really want to spend a lot of time on questions that you guys have. So Jason, I mentioned, one of my co-founders is in the chat. If you guys have questions that you want to hear about, we're going to have about 10 minutes at the end to address those. I have about 15 minutes of content put together here, just really to address a common thing that gets messed up by a lot of our customers, which is what is a guideline and when should I use it? And how does that compare to a workflow? So we're going to cover those two and where people kind of get hung up around that. And then we'll get into some Q&A. So yeah, where we'll start here, as you can see on my screen here, we're going to focus on global guidelines first and kind of what that is. Ultimately, what global guidelines are is really always on context. So always think about Quin as a human assistant for you because it kind of functions that way. Any type of global guideline that you put up here is going to be reviewed by Quin every time it does anything. So when it drafts an email, it creates a task, it takes notes, it will review these instructions here every time. So what you put here needs to be something that you'd want your assistant to know that's going to be important for everything that it does. Now, if it's just context for a specific workflow, like the note taker, maybe you want to tell Quin, this is how I want my meeting notes. You actually don't want to put this here in the global guidelines section. You're going to put that in the instructions within the actual workflow itself. And we have, when you go to set up a guideline here and you click this button, we have a little safeguard here to make you think about that. So when you're thinking about what you're going to do, does this apply everywhere or is this to a specific workflow? Like that example that I gave you, meeting note customization, that would be just a specific workflow. So you click this and we're actually going to redirect you into that particular workflow that your preferences are for, and that'll take you over there. Some good examples of good global guidelines here are going to be things like around how compliance language. Your compliance team will love this. If you want to set some restrictions around email communications that Quin is going to draft, you can put that language in here. A couple things to call out here. I know this probably looks like a PhD English major wrote this. Don't worry, Quinn will help you write this. Just chicken scratch kind of your compliance language restrictions, whether it's, don't include language around guaranteed returns, risk-free, safe investment. You could probably get that from your compliance department. Paste it here and always use this optimize button here with guidelines or workflow instructions. Quinn is really your prompt engineer. It's going to rewrite this in a nice declarative manner so that when Quinn references this, it's going to be easier for it to understand, execute things for you accurately and efficiently. So use that button. The other thing I'll kind of show you here with a guideline is you can set a guideline up for just your Quinn assistant, or you can push this across your entire team. So these options down here, if you set up this compliance guideline here, you could push this down to all team members, which is probably a pretty good use case. You can then make it optional for them, so it'll pop up in their Quinn account, but it'll be turned off. They'll have to go in and turn it on. Or if you want to make this required, you can click this required button if you're an admin on your Quinn account, and they won't be able to turn it off. So their Quinn assistant will utilize this as a global guideline going forward. So those are some of the bells and whistles. And then you can hit publish here, or we now have the ability to even save this as a draft. If you want to come back and you're not ready to publish it yet, but you want to save it for later on, you can do that, and it'll be turned off. Some other really good examples of global guidelines here would be shorthand acronyms or industry acronyms, or maybe just sayings that you have. So when you're talking with your assistant, you can say, I want you to do this particular things for HH or ACAT or CTA, all those things that you might text message to make that a little bit quicker. You can set up a shorthand instruction for this, kind of spelling those things out. I just grabbed some mock examples here, but you may have your own things and just publish that there. So Quinn will use that whenever you're talking with it. Some other examples here might be firm name and website. If you really want to make sure that your assistant always uses a particular name for your firm or uses a particular website, you can put that here and Quinn will know that going forward. So it's going to be kind of a knowledge base for it. Lastly here, this is actually one of my global guidelines for my Quinn assistant. It's really kind of reference links. This can be a knowledge base of different links that you want your assistant to know about when it's drafting communications. It can include these links in your email communications. So you can see I have our website here. So if I'm drafting a communication, I want to hyperlink this website anytime we use the word Quinn. Our website's a little weird being heyquin.io, so people can get confused. So I try to make that really easy and clickable within my communications. We can also, I teach my assistant if someone's interested in trialing Quinn to include that link and hyperlink that in a 2-week free trial. Then I also have resources down here for links for our webinars, as well as our YouTube channel that have a lot of how-to videos here. Quinn can reference this, pull particular videos and send those out based on the conversations that I'm having in meetings. So think about those different resources that you want your Quinn assistant to have at his fingertips. That's another good use case for a global guideline there. I do want to show you a bad use case for a global guideline here as well. A bad use case might be something where it really should be a workflow. This is something that whether action needs to be taken. If there's a process where you'd like your assistant to do things, it most likely should be a workflow. So birthday emails, if you wanted your Quinn assistant to look in your CRM, see whose birthday it is this week, and then draft a personalized email out to them, wishing them a happy birthday, that's really a workflow because it's taking action based on a trigger. It's not really a global guideline. So this could be a bad use of a global guideline here. It should really be a workflow. Another mistake that we see on the global guidelines here is setting up a guideline here for just a particular workflow. So meeting notes, one of our workflows is our note taker. Quinn can join meetings, take notes, and you have the ability to customize the way those look and what Quinn's doing. Creating a global guideline here doesn't make sense because it doesn't apply for all the different things Quin does. It's just to the note-taking workflow. So in this case, I wouldn't want to have a global guideline here, just talking about how I want my notes to look for the note-taking workflow. I would actually go into the workflow in this example and add that as instructions to that particular workflow. So hopefully that makes sense with some of those examples from a global guidelines perspective. I'd say a good rule of thumb would be about 5 or less global guidelines here will make a lot of sense for really our power users. More than that, it will eat a lot of credits, which we want to be a good steward of your credit usage. And it can also cause some confusion. So keep things pretty lean and mean here. And again, our team's here to help you out with those things. All right, let's jump over here to workflows. So ultimately, like I mentioned before, a workflow is a specific process you set up for Quin to run. It has a trigger or you run it on demand, and it ultimately produces a specific output. There's 3 types of workflows. There's a scheduled workflow, a triggered workflow, and an on-demand workflow. A scheduled workflow will be something that goes on a regular schedule behind the scenes, daily, weekly, monthly, even quarterly. So you can think about those processes that you want run. Quin will do those based on that schedule. A triggered workflow is going to be fired when something happens that Quin's doing for you. It could be when someone schedules a meeting with our scheduling tool, then it adds something to your CRM. Or the note taker is a good example. When a meeting ends and Quin's taking notes, the post-meeting workflow, entering data in your CRM, drafting a follow-up email, scheduling, that all kicks off based off that trigger. And then our last type of workflow would be an on-demand workflow. This is where you're required to ask Quin to do it, either via chat, text, email, Slack, or Teams, but you have to ask Quin to do it, and then it will do it for you. Maybe that's give me a summary of this household, or give me a report on all my open opportunities. Those could be kind of examples. I do want to show you some specific examples of each one of these real quick. So our note taker workflow here, hopefully you guys have all used this. Quin will join meetings, virtual meetings that are on your calendar, take notes. We have some settings. We covered this in our last webinar that you can kind of set up here on what you want Quin to do. But each of our workflows, whether it's one of our core workflows here or a custom workflow that you set up, will have a section here, which is a little confusing. It's called guidelines, but it's not a global guideline. This is a guideline or instructions that's specific here to this workflow. So when I showed that meeting notes earlier, you're going to put how you want your meeting notes to be taken, where you want data to go, and things like that, details here. And then you're able to hit this optimize button here, and it will rewrite that for you. So don't worry about it being perfect there on that. But ultimately, this is an example of a triggered workflow. All right, let's come down here and we'll take a look at another triggered workflow to show you the power of this. This is a custom workflow that I used our workflow generator to build, something that we could help you guys with, but it's extracting tasks from emails that I send or that I receive where there's something that I say I'm going to do or a customer asks me to do, and it automatically adds it to my CRM. This is a triggered workflow. Underneath here, you turn on this automation button when you're creating this yourself, and then you can determine if you want it to be a scheduled workflow, which would be this recurring scheduled option, or this triggered by Quin. And if you choose the triggered by Quin, then you just need to describe what is the trigger. In this case, it's really anytime I receive an email or I send one, Quin's monitoring those. And if there is something that I commit to doing or a client asks me to do something, Quin will create a task and tie it to that person that I'm communicating with. And those instructions are kind of all listed down here as well. So this is where you can kind of set up those different type of workflows. All right, let's take a look at a scheduled workflow. here's a really nice one that a lot of advisors use. It's our 59.5 401k milestone. Probably most of you are familiar with this. When someone turns 59.5, their company 401k can be moved underneath your management. It's a good AUN growth opportunity. They can also take unpenalized distributions. So good time to reach out. So in this workflow, Quin can monitor your contact base that's in your CRM based on birth date. And this is running automatically behind the scenes on a regular schedule, and it's running monthly. You'll also be able to determine the first day that you want this to run. Typically, I recommend the first of the month. This is set up on the 11th here, and you can even choose the time that this is going to go. So this is the flexibility of that scheduled workflow. You can choose daily, what days that it's going to run, weekly, monthly, or yearly. And Quin's going to do this automatically for you behind the scenes. In this workflow, it's going to draft personalized emails, place those in the draft folder, send you an email with a summary of everyone that it drafted emails as kind of a notification to go check your draft folder, and then you can review and send them out from there. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea around that. All right, so let's take a look at a workflow that requires you to reach out and schedule things. And let's take a look in our Discover More section here. So these are about 60 different workflows that are available to all of you, again, to turn on with a single click of a button. We'll take a look at the client activity report here. This is a workflow where you'll have to ask Quin to run it. But effectively, it can pull all of the data regarding a client and give you a summary of everything you've done for them thus far this year or all time. The automatically run this workflow is turned off, just meaning that it's got to be on demand. So you're gonna have to ask Quin to do it. So that's really the difference, whether this is turned on or turned off, if it's on demand or if it's going to be a regularly scheduled workflow or triggered by Quin. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how that works. The last thing that I want to cover here is an example of maybe a use case of a workflow that should be a guideline. Kind of scroll down here a little bit, and email tone. So sometimes customers are putting their kind of preferences around context, around email communications here as a workflow. This is not a place where this needs to go. It's really kind of, we call it the trigger test. If it has a trigger or produces a specific output, then it should be a workflow. But if it's always true about how you work, like email tone, then it should be a global guideline. So in this case, I would take this here and I would copy this. I would delete this workflow. And then I'd come over to guidelines and I would set up a guideline that's going to be set up everywhere called email tone. And then I can publish it from here. Or actually, let's have it optimized again. So we want Quin to write this in a more declarative manner, and then we're going to hit publish. So now this serves as a global guideline for me. So hopefully that's a good little walkthrough there of how things work and the difference between guidelines, workflows, and then the instructions within the workflows there. In our webinar here in a couple of weeks, we're going to get into a bit more detail about how to write each of these good guidelines, good workflows from there. But as far as the remainder of our time here, which we have another 10 minutes or so, as I promised you, let's take a look and hear from you guys. If you guys have any questions related to workflows, guidelines, instructions to guidelines, happy to take those questions now. So go ahead and throw those in the chat if you haven't already, and then we can address those. Take a look here real quick. All right. So it looks like we've got a question here. What do you do when you're not sure whether something is a guideline or a workflow? Pretty basic question there. It's the trigger test I talked about there earlier. Does it need to fire at a specific time or in response to an event? If it does, then it's going to be workflow. If it's an always true preference of how you want your assistant to work, then it really should be a guideline. So good question there. Let's see, we've got another question that came in here. Can I put the same instructions in both places? Um, you can, but you really shouldn't. It's going to it could create a bit of conflicting behavior. So kind of pick the right home and put it there once as opposed to putting it in both places. Again, if it's instructions for just a single workflow, put that within the workflow, whether it's the note taker, email reply, or custom workflow. If you see it being true for multiple workflows, then it can be that global guideline. So it's important enough to go there. Good question. Let's see, keep going here. Good questions. How many global guidelines should I have? Um, our power users tend to have around 5 or less. Now those guidelines can be big, so don't be nervous to add a lot of kind of content to it and use that optimize button. It's better to have less workflows than a bunch of different ones. And again, using that optimize button, that'll keep it from having any conflicting language there for you. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Keep those questions coming in. Let's see what happens if I put a workflow instruction in global guidelines by mistake. Basically, Quin will follow everywhere, not just where you intended. So it's not necessarily going to break things or mess things up for you. It's just going to add a bit of noise, and it could cost you more credits. That's the other thing we talked on the previous webinar is since Quin's checking the global guidelines every single time it does anything for you, that does consume credits. So if you had 10, 15, 20 different global guidelines, that's like asking your assistant to read 20 pages of something that may not matter every time it goes and does something here. And that does cost you credits. So we want to be a good steward and keep that credit usage focused on things of value for you. All right. Let's see. Should my tone and voice preferences go in guidelines or a workflow? Oh, that's a good question. Um, Global guidelines would be my guidance there if you want them kind of to be used everywhere. Inside a specific workflow, only if they apply there, like email replies or sounding different than meeting notes or that email follow-up. Typically what we see is, everybody wants them to kind of sound the same ways. What I would say is that Quin does an amazing job of training itself on your writing style. Hopefully you guys have all experienced that. Once you connect Outlook or Gmail, it's reading your past 15 emails that you've composed to train itself on humor, brevity, conciseness, all of those things. It's also pulling in kind of context of who you are in your role to execute that. But you can add a bit more there if you see something that you want tweaked. Awesome. All right. Let's see, Jason, any other Q&A on your side that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we had a question from Bria. It's a really good question. I think we get this a lot when I do sort of like customer walkthroughs. When wanting to have Quinn do something related to integrations, such as the new SharePoint integration, would that be a workflow? Integrations with SharePoint, I think, need a specific link. But this is one I've been waiting for, so really looking forward to using this one. So yeah, so if you ever set up an integration, I'm sure when you're in there, once you connect and authenticate, you'll actually see a little guidelines block in there as well. So essentially, just like how you would add guidelines to a workflow, whether it's customer core, in integrations, Gabe, if you want to click on integrations,
Yep.
um, and just click on any one of those integrations, even DocuSign at the top.
Okay.
You'll see, so yes, you'll see a block in here for guidelines. Essentially, like again, these are any rules that you want Quinn to follow around this integration. And what's nice about this is again, it's not getting included every time Quinn does anything. It's only when Quinn's going to use this integration specifically. So it'll have that context. It'll be very specific. And so if you're looking to, you know, have a specific link in SharePoint or folder or something like that, then you can just drop those guidelines in here. Yeah, great
Beautiful.
question.
Beautiful.
Mhm. Oh, we got One more from Dustin. When do you think it makes sense for Quinn to communicate as Quinn, digital assistant, versus communication on my behalf? It appears people are getting more used to communicating with AI and can also be a conversation started with clients, etc.
Yeah, I can take that one for Dustin. Good question. I think a lot of the where Quinn is today is wanting to take the admin work off of your plate and making it sound like it's coming from you. So at the end of the day, we want to help our customers build rapport and trust. And seeing that a communication and effort was taken to communicate there deepens that. When it comes from an AI assistant, you're missing out on that part there. So I think we want to be a little bit careful about when we're having Quinn, the assistant, get back versus your communications, because that's what keeps that rapport and trust alive with your clients there. So today, Quinn can remind folks that you're meeting with on your calendar. I think that's a good use case and sparks conversation. Quinn's joining meetings and taking notes. And I think a lot of customers are very, very comfortable with that, even like that, to know that they're in good hands with someone that's using a great technology. But when it comes to communications, I think still hearing it from the human is critically important, which is why Quinn's doing that kind of on your behalf, putting that on a silver plate there for you to just approve and send out versus kind of automatically sending that, which kind of gets people in trouble there. So good question. But we'll see. The world is definitely changing over time. So we'll see as things continue to grow and there's more comfort around this. We're keeping a steady watch on that. Awesome. Well, we do have just 2 more minutes here. If anybody has a last second question, go ahead and shoot that in here right now, and we can address that. I'll give a few seconds there for that to come in. Um, if not, we really appreciate everybody joining today, taking time in your busy schedules to connect with us here and learn a bit more about Quinn. If you have any feedback here on things that you'd like to learn about on these upcoming webinars, which we're doing every other week, please let us know. Reach out to us. Let us know what you'd like to see. All of these webinars will be live. We're going to place these here on our site, just heyquin.io/webinars. And then if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out your questions or gifts to us. We have an amazing team here ready to help you with anything that you need to really get Quinn up and going. So feel free to email us at help@heyquin.io, or we do have an amazing, if you're a self-serve person, we have all the videos and support articles here. You're welcome to kind of peruse those as you see fit. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We'll be in touch with you here very soon. And until next time, have a great day.